Good morning and a happy Mother's Day. We begin our program checking in on what's going on at the Capitol with 24 days left to get the state's budget and proposed bills figured out. Joining us to talk about what's a go and what's a no and what's still to be worked out is our crack political pairing of Channel 3's chief political reporter, Susan Raff, and Dan Haar, columnist and senior editor with Hearst, Connecticut Media. Welcome to both of you. Happy Mother's Day, Susan.
Why, thank you very much.
Let's talk about budget first, because everybody wants to know about those numbers. Where does that stand right now? What's the latest, and what will we watch for over these next couple weeks?
Well, you could call this the budget battle. So we have not one, not two, not three, but four budgets, right? So the governor, Democrats, and Republican House and Senate have all put forth their proposals. All of them include tax cuts. So I think it's safe to say that we're going to see some form of a tax cut. The big issue is, or the question is, to whom and how much?
I'll go a tiny bit further or farther out on the limb. I guess farther. We're going to see a half a point tax cut on that 5% middle class rate, because basically everybody but some Democrats wants to see it. The moderate Democrats, all the Republicans, and the governor. I suspect we're going to see that full half point cut, which is one of the more important centerpieces of those budgets. We may also see the Republicans both have a $1,000 or $2,000 deduction, not a credit, a deduction, which will be worth about $100 or so, give or take, to the typical family.
Well, I think it sounded good.
For children.
It sounded good. It was like a $2,000 deduction, but in reality, it's maybe about $90. The governor's plan is about $300 roughly for single filers, $600 for joint. The big thing with the Republican proposal, they want to not fill about 300 positions. I think it's 300.
That's right, the Republicans, that's right.
Yeah, they don't want to fill the vacant positions in government. That's how they want to take some of it and give more tax cuts.
Now, there are two ways to look at those 300 positions, just quickly here. One is, oh my God, the sky is falling. We have to fill all our positions. And the other is, I remind everybody that Democratic Governor Dan Malloy eliminated 4,000 positions. So putting it in perspective.
We'll have a budget.
Right.
Last time you guys were here, you thought it might even be a budget that doesn't get done in the wee hours. Do you still think that even with these competing plans that there will be something hashed out here?
I think the big misnomer is that people think because we have all this surplus and rainy day fund that there's all this money to spend. And the reality is, because of the spending cap, which Republicans and Democrats voted for and supported, there isn't as much money as people think there is. So they still have to live within the guidelines of the spending cap, right? And but I think we're going to see a tax cut. And, you know, is it a huge amount of money? Probably not. But it'll make some people feel good. Breathing room is how someone described it to me this week.
The big dispute is over the earned income tax credit for the working poor. The Republicans don't want to, neither Republican plan wants to do that. They may have to give in. There will be a coalition here. There may be a coalition between the moderate Democrats, including Lamont, and the Republicans. So the Republican votes do matter here. I would point out also that the difference between the smallest of the tax cuts, Lamont's, is about $550 million, and the Republicans, the biggest of them, is about $725 million per year. We are so close. You could toss a coin in and that dispute.
So a kumbaya moment for
Absolutely.
Everybody.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. Four plans and a kumbaya moment.
There you go.
The other big thing, you mentioned having the votes, and it is voting. That's the other big topic. We've seen some stuff on that. Tell us where voting stands, both early voting and some changes to absentee.
Big week at the state capitol. Well, early voting passed the previous week, and then this past week we had absentee ballots, or absentee voting. And the early voting is really, it's critical because, you know, voters had to go and change that constitutional amendment, which they overwhelmingly did, over 60%. And I think this time around, people really want more options. Connecticut's one of only 4 states that doesn't have some form of early voting, so that will give people a chance. And the way that it looks now, 14 days before a general election to vote, which is not the most, the least. I think the average is about 21 days, but we're going to have 14 if it passes, and it gives people that leeway. And I think because of the pandemic, people want more options.
One of the points is that you can't change your mind if you early vote, but you can if you absentee vote. So if the early voting essentially is absentee voting, which it is, because you don't get to put your thing in the machine, it doesn't get tallied. It may eventually get tallied as early voting on the day that you early vote, but right now we don't have the machines to do it. That's a separate item in the bonding budget, right? But for now, it's just going to be treated like an absentee ballot. So in a way, you'd be kind of crazy to do an early vote, because what if you want to change your mind until that changes? So it's a little bit of a complexity to that. And eventually, the early voting and the absentee voting become sort of one big thing, as Matt Blumenthal explained,
and
Representative
both
Blumenthal.
pass the House, they have to pass the Senate, which they probably will. And the Republicans have some concerns with early voting, mainly because it does put more pressure on cities and towns, especially registrars. They're part-time. The state's going to have to come up with some money. I think there's about $4 million there to do that. And if they can do that, then there shouldn't be any problems. And I think people want it.
But in the land of steady habits, this might be one where we did it differently for COVID, and everyone said, "Well, that wasn't all right."
We've seen things.
Okay.
We've seen things fall apart for less, but this is awfully right there. I would also point out that, just to be clear, the no excuse absentee ballot voting can't happen until after 2024 because it's a constitutional amendment that goes on the ballot in 2024. So the earliest it could happen is 2025.
Right, but early voting, if it passes through the Senate,
would be for
we would see it for the presidential election November 2024.
All right, a lot of people are going to be watching that. Kind of shifting gears here, we saw Representative Comey, who had left due to after an alcohol-related crash, left the legislature. She's now back, and we also got some news on Representative Williams, who was killed in that deadly crash earlier this year. What's the latest there, and what's the sort of the mood talking about this? This is tough stuff.
It is, and I think it's not easy. I mean, are lawmakers held to higher standard? Of course, you bet. I think so. And Comey is back at the state capitol. I had a chance to talk with her outside of court. She admits that she is addicted to alcohol. She has a drinking problem. Hopefully she'll get help. Her privileges or the committee assignments have been suspended. But let's face it, I mean, she, sets laws that we're all supposed to live by. I think the situation with Q Williams was disheartening for a lot of people. He didn't cause the crash. It was someone else who caused the wrong way crash. But I think knowing that he was nearly twice the legal limit, and so was the driver who hit him, it made people very sad.
And going 85.5 miles an hour, which raises all kinds of uncomfortable questions, none of which have to do with fault in the crash. That was all hers because she was going the wrong way. And
it's hard to say. I mean, if he had not been speeding or had not been drinking, would he be alive today? I don't know. I don't think anyone could say that. And it's just hard for the family. But, the speaker, I think, said it very sensitively that, everyone should abide by the law, but it shouldn't take away the legacy that Q Williams had at the state capitol.
More broadly, there's the cultural question about whether at the Capitol there is a problem with drinking, and there's a debate about that, which obviously people have different opinions, but broadly in the culture as a whole, yes, we do.
Well, we have a lot more things to talk about, but we don't have a lot more time. So we'll have to have you back before the legislature wraps up. We'll talk about some of those other issues. Susan, Raff, Dan Haar, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.